Thank you, Liz. I looked in the bulletin, Roberta Kroll, I don't see her here today. So thank you very much for stepping in. Had a challenging week at our house this week. Part of it's our fault, probably part of it isn't. Our computers at home have been ailing, and we never get around to getting a tech in to help us fix them, mainly because they like to work during the day, and so do I, and I'm quite busy. So anyhow, my laptop got lately so that the mouse doesn't work, so I can't turn that on. And our main computer, I don't know what happened to that. I was on the tech support early summer with an hour and a half, and the guy says, I don't know what to tell you. So anyhow, a couple weeks ago, Kurt says, I think you guys need a new computer, and he found just the right one, and he says, I'll buy it for you and send it to you. It'll come right, UPS, right to the house. So he did. So I hooked it up one day, and it still didn't work, and I knew something wasn't right. So Bruce was over for the Bible study Tuesday night, and he took one look at it, and I had one thing plugged in the wrong spot, and away it went. Just fine. Perfect. Thank you, Bruce. Thursday morning, lightning struck. Didn't take out the new computer, but it took out the router. And we didn't get that fixed until late yesterday. So anyhow, I did a lot of my work on my sermon down in at the office. I have a bunch of slides here, and when we get ready for them, I worked on them, and I got them just in the right order, and I had my jump drive, and I was ready to download them. And it downloaded them as a video slideshow, 58 seconds. You guys will be out of church early today. So I couldn't get it to work, and so Robbie Olson came to my rescue, and about 7 o'clock last night we had them loaded where we wanted them, and so we can have the presentation today that we wanted. Many times when and as far as the title of the sermon, you have to wait till the end to figure that out. Right? Many times when I do a sermon, I'll have a scriptures, and it's like I'm just about done with it, and I really haven't used it yet. So you have to make sure you get it worked in. This one just absolutely jumped out at me, talking about the flood. And chapter 6 of Genesis, verse 5, the Lord saw how great man's wickedness on earth had become, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil all the time. That's terrible. All of his thoughts were evil all of the time. I have some evil thoughts some of the time, but I hope I don't have them all the time. Anyhow, then you go further down, he says, the Lord grieved that he had made man on earth, and his heart was filled with pain. So the Lord said, I will wipe mankind, whom I have created, from the face of the earth. And we had a lot of parents here this morning. And how many of you, I don't want any raise of hands, but how many of you ever, I don't want any hand to go up, how many of you ever got so upset with your kids that you wish you'd never had them born, or you wanted to kill them, even worse? The Lord wanted to wipe everybody off. He was so upset with mankind, he wanted to kill it. He wanted to kill everybody. And it says, I am grieved that I have made them. Now, my mom tells when she grew up down by Bluffton, there was a family not too far from them. They had 11 kids, and the guy says, I wouldn't give $1 million for any of the kids I have, but I wouldn't give you a nickel for another one. That's a little bit different. So, God had at least one righteous person on this earth, and that was Noah. So he says to Noah, he says, now the earth was corrupt and full of violence. We knew that. So he says to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in it and make it with pitch, inside and out. This is how you're supposed to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, by 50 cubits wide, by 30 cubits high. Is that first picture, please? There you are. Now, some people say that the cubit is 18 inches, some say 20. If it's 18 inches, it would be 450 feet. If it's 20, it's a little over 500 long. By the way, that is a real structure. It's in northern Kentucky, on the highway between Lexington and Cincinnati, Ohio. And it is a complete full-size reconstruction of the ark. Next picture. And they did a few other things there. And we'll take the third picture. You can see how big it is from the front, or excuse me, this is from the back of the boat. Okay, now, going on down, the Lord says, take you 7 of every clean animal, a male and its mate, and 2 of every unclean animal, a male and its mate, and so also 7 of every kind of bird, male and female. Keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. This is when they were actually getting ready to go into the ark at the end of the 100 years of building. So now the question is it 7 or 7 pair? Looking in different Bible versions, the King James, the New King James, the North American Standard Bible, and the older NIV, which is the one that's written in 1984, say 7, but the NIV has an asterisk in it. Hebrew text literally reveals 7 sevens, a male and his female, in Genesis 7:2. Does this unique phrasing mean 7 or 14? In favor of the 7 view is that Genesis 8:20 states that Noah sacrificed clean animals and birds after the flood. While it doesn't say that Noah sacrificed just one animal of each kind, those who hold to the view of 7 would point to the common 6+1 pattern seen in the Old Testament. For example, God created the world in 6 days and rested the 7th, Genesis 2:2, and also again Exodus 20:11. Perhaps 6 of each clean animal was for man's use and 1 was dedicated for the Lord. In favor of the 7 pairs view is the text mentioned that there would be a male and his female for the clean animals. If an odd number was brought to Noah, then plenty of the animals did not have a mate. Furthermore, the Hebrew text does not use a similar wording with the unclean animals in verse 2. That is, we know that 1 pair of unclean animals was in view, and that the text does not say 2, a male and his female. It just has the word for 2. Since Hebrew scholars do not agree about the issue, it seems wise to be tentative about which view is accurate. The researchers behind the Ark experience decided to base their calculations on the 7 pairs position. Okay, if we can have the next picture, please. And the next one. Okay. God said to fill the ark with rooms. So how many animals did they actually need to take care of? Well, as it turns out, the ark had 22 extra large cages, 186 large cages, 293 medium cages, 308 bird cages, 174 small cages, and 415 amphibian cages. When the Lord asked for the animals to be brought into the ark, we think he thought everything through, and he probably brought small animals that were just weaned. Because of the time they were in the ark, a lot of them would undergo some maturity at that time. And I know you farmers a lot of times know it's a lot of times easier to take care of animals that haven't reached puberty yet than the ones that have. So it's pretty easy to figure out that the Lord, when the Lord told these animals or had these animals move into the ark, that it was animals that were small. Next picture. Water. In the ark, they had room for 95,000 gallons in storage in vessels. That would be about 4 months' supply. They also had cisterns that would hold about an 11-month supply. That's 15 months. So where did this rain come from? Or this water come from? They didn't store it all before they started. Next picture. And the next picture. Okay. We got out of order there a little bit. But if you remember, back when the Lord told Moses to build the ark, he said to make a pitched roof. They captured rainwater. And that filled those cisterns, and that was the water that they used. They had water. They had to have water to start with, because we know that the animals were in the ark for a week before they were able to, before the rain ever started. And then it was probably, at that point, they could start catching rainwater. So, of the animals that went into the ark, okay, I have a little problem with this picture. This was their rendition of the food storage. In I think it's 621. Yeah, you will take every kind of food that will be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. This looks like just grains. Well, it was more than grains. They had to have roughage. They had herbivores. They had carnivores. I'm not exactly sure what they used for them. They had animals that just eat insects. They had a pretty good, unique way of taking care of those, and we will see that shortly. But this looks like it was all just grain, and we know that that wasn't true. They needed about 400 tons of feed to feed all the animals. They had approximately 15,000 storage vessels in the ark. And even though they had all the land animals, they had no aquatic animals. I told you earlier that they probably used small neonates, animals that had just been weaned in their storage in the ark. It's believed that 85% of the animals that were in the ark weighed 22 pounds or less. It is also believed that 7% of them weighed from 22 to 220 pounds. That would be 10 to 100 kilograms. And 8% weighed over 220 pounds. And the interesting thing is that the way they had it set up, biggest animals they account for was just a little over a ton, which would be a young elephant probably, or a pair of elephants. So that's kind of interesting. Everything was accounted for, everything fit. Okay, so how many animals, let's go to the next picture please. And there's some of your storage water vessels again, next picture. There's our pitched roof again on the top that God told Noah to build, and Noah built it, and they used that for entrapment of the water. Next picture. This is unique. The amphibians, total insect eaters. Some of your birds are total insect eaters too. You farmers, remember when you're out swathing grain, how the swallows will fly around? They get out there, there'll be dozens of them flying around as you're swathing grain. And if you think about it, they're always downwind from the swather, always. So what are they doing? They're picking up the insects that are coming out of the swathed grain, the grain is all there in this nice little environment, and they're happy and snug, and all of a sudden the farmer comes along with this big machine and cuts all the grain down, and so they have nothing to do but fly. and they fly in with the wind. And so here's the swallows around there. They're capturing all of these insects. And we have problems around here sometimes if the swallows come and we have a really late spring or a hard frost or something, because they really have nothing to eat but insects. And so that would be another thing. This is what you see here is they had boxes, and whatever the substrate was, whether it was water and fecal material, or water and grain, or water and flour, or water and some other plant material, or whatever it was, they would put it in there, let the insects grow and hatch and mature out, and then they could fly through a small tube into another chamber where the amphibians and some of the other birds that needed insects and stuff would be, and then they would be able to harvest them that way. So they actually grew the fodder for the insects as they were in the ark. Next picture. This is just, and it said the three levels, and there's 3 levels there. This is the one that they built. We don't know for sure that this is the way Noah did it, but the middle deck, right about in the middle of the ship, there was living quarters for the family. And of course, according to the researchers that put this together, they had the living quarters set up fairly nicely, because they were in there a while. So, okay, let's do the next picture. Okay, 1,398 animal kinds, and was it 6,744 animals? This is what they figured based on the clean and the unclean. Now, in our canines, in this country, we've got dogs, we've got coyotes, and we've got timber wolves. You go overseas, you get dingoes and jackals, right? That could have all been represented by 2 animals. Same with a lot of the other species that are out there now. So that's where they came up with the how many animals, the kinds that they were, and that included all the insects and everything else that's above ground. Didn't include the water things, of course. And then based on the formulas that they found in the Bible, that's where they came up with that figure of 6,744 animals. Next slide. And inside the ark, they did actually have a cut-down version so you can actually look at the whole thing and see each layer what they are, just so you can get just a capture really quick of it in the facility. Next picture. Take next picture. Okay. There is open ventilation in the middle, went all the way up to the top where that pitched roof was, and there was 18-inch opening up there. So I looked at this and I'm thinking, you know, some of these agricultural engineers really need to take stock of what they did here, because this was pretty good system of natural ventilation. Very, very good, in fact. And that's how it was. The center was open, all those wood pillars it was open all the way to the top, and then we had that 18-inch gap in the top. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned this to you or not, but this structure is the largest wood structure in the world. Yep, there's not another one bigger. All wood structures, largest wood structure in the world. Next picture. Now we're kind of getting into the living quarters of the people, and what they depicted in the Ark experience was fairly nice living quarters. Next picture. And this would show probably one of the daughters-in-law there. They spent some time, and I didn't really bother to go into it right now, about all of our different races that we have. You know, they figure Noah and his wife and his 3 sons are all going to be one set of genetics, and they postulated, and I'll say postulated, that maybe the sons all had wives of different races that accounted for the races that we have in the earth now. So that's one theory. That's one theory that they have. So, how long, we know that they had fairly nice living quarters. How long were they in the ark?
40 days and 40 nights.
It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. How long were they in the ark? Well, let's figure it out. At the time that Noah was told to go into the ark, he was 600 years in his second month and 17th day. All right? They were in the ark for 7 days. Then it rained. It started raining on that day, but they'd already been in there for 7 days. Rained for 40 days. Floodwaters lasted 150 days. We see that in Genesis 7:24. That would be 5 months. So now Noah is 600 years, 7 months, and 17 days. And at 10 months, and at the 10-month time, 600 years and 10 months, the tops of the mountains were visible. Okay, at 11 months and 10 days, he sent a raven out, and a raven flew back and forth, and the dove returned to Noah's hand. Do we have the next picture, please? So that's the depiction of Noah taking the dove back into the ark. The dove came back to Noah's hand, and on the 601st year of Noah's life, on the first day of the first month, they removed the covering from the ark, and they saw that the ground was dry. 600th day, the second month, the 27th day, they were commanded to come out of the ark. And according to my Wadena SDA Church School math, that should be 1 year and 17 days in the ark. All right? No wonder God wanted him to have nice surroundings. And no wonder they had food in the ark for a year and 4 months. Because even though the ground was dry, and it had been some time since this dove had come back with the olive leaf, I'm sure there wasn't a lot of food out there for these animals right away. So they probably had to feed them a while after they had them out of the ark. We know they had a year and 4 or 5 months feed supply, a year and 4 months water supply. And so the Lord definitely did plan this and did take care of them during this time. A lot of it was miracles. A lot of it was very, very good planning, too. I think we might have one more picture. Okay, and there are the doors. Now, we know that the doors were closed when the ark was closed with unseen hands. This probably isn't accurate to the Bible, but the entry to the ark was in the front end of the ark, and this was actually fairly close to the back end, and it did have handles on it because, being a public facility, it was a fire escape. So Noah didn't have to go by those rules. Same thing with elimination of feces and things. There was a place on each end of the ark where they had a big hole that went just down and out. And I looked at that and I thought, well, let's see, there was no EPA back then, there was no MPCA back then. They could do a few things like that and get away with it. So, and as far as the labor involved in the ark, they felt that it took one person I get a little rendition of what they think the 8 people were doing. 8 people, their daily labor. 1 person dealing with human food and special diets. 3 people cleaning cages. Half a person shoveling waste to the pits. 1 person watering, 1 person feeding, and 1.5 doing other laundry and other maintenance items that were necessary. So that's what they did as far as the food, the care, waste elimination. And when the Lord said it's time to go, they left. Now, we can't leave this sermon without tying in some things from the New Testament. I have 3 texts that I'd like to read to you. The first one is 2 Peter 3 verse 9, talking about Lord being upset, like being mad. The Lord is not slow to fulfill his promises, as some understand slowness. He is patient toward you, not wishing for any to perish, but for all to come to repentance. The second text is Revelation 21, 3 and 4, talking about the righteous. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them. God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death. Grieving, crying, and pain will no longer exist, because the former things have passed away. And the last text I'm going to leave you with is 1 Corinthians 15:26. The last enemy to be destroyed is death, the death of death. Closing song, number 195.